start seeing it as soon as I click this button. So
Yeah, I think let's wait for some people to log in. Oh, you must be able to see, right? Or is it just you and me?
yeah, there's a couple of users starting to log in on YouTube now.
Okay, okay.
Hi, everybody. As we wait for a few more people to trickle in, please please feel comfortable. Be at home. This is going to be a relaxed conversation, hopefully an interaction between all of us. We will start in exactly 2 minutes. So till then, I'm gonna stay quiet till we wait for the numbers to roll in. Okay, great. I can see people are joining in slowly. So, Sachin, I'm gonna start if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's start. Let's start.
All right. So, hi everybody, and thank you for joining us today on a Wednesday evening. I know a lot of you are still it's still a working day, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So, first off, let me thank B.PAC for helping organize all of this. So, thank you, Sachin, and thank you, team, for putting this together. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Varun. I work with Agami. And in today's session, we're going to talk about transforming the law and justice field. And straight off the bat, I want to, I just want to lay out my intent. Um, we have something called the Agami Prize running, and I'm really hoping there's a lot of great change makers amongst you who are listening to this conversation and will hopefully be inspired to join and sign up for Agami Prize. And Agami Prize recognizes innovation in the law and justice space. So just laying that out there so that you know this is my intent. And long term, what I'm also hoping is that many of you join in what is becoming the growing ecosystem of change makers in law and justice. Um, and as a disclaimer, before I start, I am not a lawyer, nor am I a legal expert in the space. My knowledge of this field comes entirely from having worked with Agami, and I don't claim to be an expert on legal matters or legal issues. In fact, the organization Agami is made up of lawyers as well as non-lawyers, and in fact, it's the more people who join, the mix between lawyers and non-lawyers is now tilting towards non-lawyers. So I speak entirely from my personal perspective of having worked with not just people within Agami, but also people within the law and justice community and change makers who are trying to transform this field. In today's conversation, I'm going to talk about the law and justice field and what it's really going to take to transform this space. Um, Law and justice has been a very close space, especially for people like me who don't really come from a law and justice background. I didn't study law in any capacity, nor have I practiced law in any capacity. In fact, I come from the communication space. I've worked with advertising agencies for about 10 years of my career. I've spent some time in the social sector. I've worked in the education space with Make a Difference. I've worked with political parties in the past, and I've also run my own climate change initiative. And so for me, law and justice is completely new. And having worked with Agami, what I've realized is you don't need a background in law and justice to really create impactful change in this space. And to a lot of people listening to this, it seems obvious, because it's like saying that if you want to make impact in the finance sector, you have to be a banker, and we all know that that's not true. You have a lot of innovative startups working in the finance sector. Many of the founders of these organizations have no background in finance, and a wise person told me not too long ago, about a week ago, I was talking to a friend, and he was saying, they have a belief in their organization that the older the problem, the older the solutions. And the time has really come for spaces like law and justice to open out, and for young change makers, to come into the space and start innovating. So we're going to spend some time today talking about problems in the law and justice space, and what organizations like Agami are trying to do to open up the space to more people and more entrepreneurs. and how you can get involved in a piece of that action. Uh, so starting off, law and justice is an essential service. It touches all of us. We're all one way or the other impacted by law and justice, both directly as well as indirectly. Directly, if you have any cases, if you've got any disputes that you're fighting with another party, then you're directly impacted by law and justice. You're most likely required in court. You've invested time, money, resources in the justice system. Indirectly, there's an entire system of law and justice which is designed to ensure our rights as citizens. So, if you are confident today to walk out onto the road and you don't expect anything to happen to you, or even if something does happen to you, you expect that there's an entire system out there designed to protect your rights and to ensure that any violation of those rights is remedied. There's a certain belief that the system will work for you. So, in one way or the other, we're all impacted by law and justice, and we have an inherent trust that the system will work for us one way or the other. The contradiction to that sentence is that while we believe that law and justice will work for us, we don't think that it always works in our best interest. And let me explain that contradiction. Uh, while we believe that the intent of the judicial system is to protect our rights, very often when we have to work with the judiciary or we have to work with some body that's connected to law and justice, we don't expect to have a smooth experience, right? So if you've interacted with police, if you've interacted with the courts, you know how sometimes inefficient these services tend to be. Just to give you a stat, this is a government of India stat. On average, it takes 4 years for a court case to reach some sort of resolution in the courts. And for most people, 4 years is just too long to wait. If you are a business, for example, a bank that's giving out loans, and you have customers who are not repaying those loans, you have to rely on the judicial system to help you collect on those loans. And if the judicial system is not efficient in dealing with these kinds of cases, then you're looking at increased cost of servicing your own customers, right? So there's an ease of doing business issue. If you are a citizen that is aggrieved, you have a dispute either with your employer, you have a dispute maybe with your employee, you have a dispute with your landlord, and now all of these problems are getting worse as a result of COVID. You rely very heavily on the judicial system to give you some sort of solution. And if the judicial system does not have the capacity to give you that solution in a cost effective way, in a time bound way, and in a way that serves your needs, then the judiciary isn't really serving us. And really, the job that or the role that Agami is trying to play is to identify where some of these problems can be taken away from the judiciary and moved in some way to the private sector, where there's a lot of energy and a lot of young minds who are willing to work on these problems and solve for these problems. uh, it seems very obvious, but in every other sector this seems to be happening. If you look at tech, or if you look at for example healthcare, or if you look at education, there is a great ecosystem of entrepreneurs, businessmen, change makers, investors, customers, who are all working together to create this very vibrant ecosystem. And because of that, you have a lot of people who are incentivized to get into those sectors and start, creating solutions to problems in those sectors. But for some reason, law and justice has been left behind, and we haven't seen that kind of change-making activity happening. We haven't seen entrepreneurs showing interest in this space in the past, and a large part of the reason for that is because the incentives that would bring these entrepreneurs aren't really there in the sector as we speak. So whenever you talk to people who are in the law and justice space, and who are the people? I mean, these are lawyers, judges, police, other law practitioners, paralegal services, etc. These are the only people who operate in this space. And anytime you talk to them about issues such as pendency in court, the solution that they give you is, oh, we need more judges, oh, we need more lawyers. And we've been saying the same thing for the last 50 years, for the last half century. We've been talking about the same solutions to the same problems, and clearly it's not working. So what Agami has been trying to do is make law and justice attractive enough so that not only more lawyers and more judges come in and see the space as being attractive for them career wise, but more entrepreneurs who are not lawyers, who don't want careers as judges, to come into this space and take small pieces of these problems and turn them into solutions. So the way Agami does this is typically we have what's called challenges, and Agami organizes these challenges as a quick way to incentivize entrepreneurs to get into the system. So what Agami does is we identify a problem and we frame the problem in such a way that it is attractive to entrepreneurs, and then we line up incentives for entrepreneurs to find this challenge attractive enough to participate in. So I'll give you an example. We have two challenges that we've done in the short 2 years that we've existed. In the first challenge that Agami ran, which is called the EADR challenge, or the E Alternative Dispute Resolution Challenge, there the problem that we were trying to solve was pendency in court. There's a whole bunch of disputes that are clogging up the judicial system, which don't really need to be in the judicial system in the first place. The business community has a lot of cases. They're one of the largest generators of cases, apart from the government itself, that are clogging up the justice system. So if we can move many of these cases out of court and find out whether there are private ways of solving these cases, then the court will be freed up to resolve more important cases such as constitutional matters, such as other issues which are more pertinent for the court to look into, as opposed to trying to resolve landlord versus tenant issues, or employer versus employee issues, or loan collection default issues, or check bounce issues. Like, these are issues that are repeatable, which means that there is a common pattern to these cases, and they don't really require the time of a judge to have to spend on these cases. And the cost of resolving these issues, sometimes it's not even worth going to court. If you have a loan that is worth 5,000 rupees, it makes no sense for a lender to go to court and spend sometimes 3 times or 4 times the amount to try and collect this small amount. So is there a way for us to create a system where even small cases can be heard on private platforms without all of these inefficiencies, where you don't need a lawyer, you don't need an expensive lawyer, you don't have to spend 4 years in court, you don't have to spend money traveling to the different courts. You have your lower court, you have your higher court, and then you have your Supreme Court. You sometimes have to spend money traveling to all of these places, right? So many inefficiencies that you have to worry about. So is there a way of doing this online, in the same way that you pick up your phone and you can order your food online, right? Within a 10-kilometer radius, you can order your food on Swiggy or Zomato or any other service, and and you trust that that food will come to you. You're able to make payments online. You don't have to go to a bank. You don't have to write a check. All of these things today happen online. There are multiple players in this space, so you have choice as well. So why can't we have a similar system for resolving disputes, where two people who have a dispute between each other can show up online, and without a lawyer, you have somebody who's either mediating for you or negotiating for both of you, and you both arrive at some sort of a conclusion, and that case doesn't have to go to court. So we framed the problem, which is we were looking for somebody who could bring disputes online and solve cases en masse. And we're not talking about hundreds and thousands, we're talking about millions of cases being able to go online without the need for a judge or a lawyer, etc. So when we opened up this challenge, we brought on board ICICI Bank as a partner. And what ICICI Bank said is, whichever platform can demonstrate a great solution, uh, they are willing to give 10,000 cases that are currently stuck in court to this platform. And so, long story short, a bunch of startups came on board. They applied for this competition, and Sama, which was an organization that won that particular challenge, was given these 10,000 cases by ICICI Bank to resolve. And just to give you a sense, now they're still resolving these 10,000 cases. Many of them have reached a conclusion. Many of them are still in that onboarding stage. Just to give you a sense of how well these online systems are doing, the cost of resolving some of these cases are sometimes in the hundreds of rupees versus lakhs of rupees. And in one example, a case was resolved in 23 minutes. In 23 minutes, when it was stuck in court earlier for 10 months. So this is an example of the kind of time efficiencies, etc. And people love this service because they don't have to, travel to another city or another state, to find their case heard. Very often, they are willing to resolve these cases on a platform that saves them all of this time and all of this trouble. And as I speak, I can hear there's a question: is mediating and solving out of court legal? Yes, it is legal. There are, in fact, an award that is given through mediation or arbitration is just as legal as a verdict given by court, and they are enforceable. These are enforceable awards. So they're just as legal, and they're recognized not only by the judiciary, they're also recognized by the government of India. Um, so this gives you an example of how innovation and all of these startups that are providing these platforms are all very young startups. In fact, Sama, who won this particular competition, they were a bunch of college students who built this entire platform. And they moved to Bangalore. They, in fact, worked out of the Agami office to build out this entire platform. And today they have more than 30 clients from from big NBFC organizations, large banks, to big finance organizations as well. And they also have small businesses who are now coming to them to resolve small cases where the amount in contention is 5,000 rupees, 3,000 rupees. Even those small amounts are now coming onto these online dispute resolution platforms. Agami not only works with the winners of these challenges, we also work with the other organizations who participated. So we're not just trying to build these, the organizations that are doing absolutely amazing. There are a bunch of other organizations which are at a much early stage who need a lot more help. And even though they don't win these challenges, Agami actually works with all of these. So we are actually working with 10 startups right now in the online dispute resolution space and trying to make sure that all of them survive, that all of them find demand for their services, and that all of them are receiving the kind of support and recognition that the winner is receiving as well, barring the 10,000 cases that ICICI Bank gave to this one platform. So that's an example of one challenge. We similarly had a second challenge where we realized that one of the biggest problems in the law and justice space is access to information and data. Courts don't have a very good history of providing open data. Very often, their websites are very difficult to navigate. The format in which they give their information is not accessible. It's not interoperable. And you can't really do any kind of data analysis on the PDF documents, etc., that these courts put out. Plus, law firms, organizations that are generating data in this space, even they don't put out information. So it's really difficult for a new person to come into this space and try and access all of this information. So we put out a challenge where we said, we want an organization to create a platform where all these other organizations, courts, law firms, lawyers, etc., can not only put up information in a way that it is open to everybody, but can also access information. So if journalists want to access legal data, there is one common place for them to go and access it. If lawyers are looking for data or past data on cases, etc., there is an easy way for them to access it. And we put out the call. So we worked with partners across sectors. We had Roni Nilekani Foundation. We had other partners as well, some who contributed in a monetary fashion, some who just supported us, like Omindia Network, for example, who together, all of us managed to raise about 1 crore of funds to award to a range of organizations who would not only build a platform where this data can be shared, but other organizations as well who would actively create data sets and make the data ready for the public to consume and put them onto this platform in an open, free sort of manner. So a bunch of organizations won a grant to create data sets, and one organization, which is Civic Data Lab based in Delhi, won the larger grant to actually build the platform. And this is now currently in its alpha stage. In fact, it's been 6 months since the challenge was over. And the platform has now reached its alpha stage where we're now testing it with various stakeholders. And it is expected to launch in the next 2 to 3 months. So this is unprecedented to have data at this scale being opened up to the general public, whoever wants to access this information. And we're also actively working with organizations that want to create more data sets and looking at ways in which we can bring investors to come and fund some of these projects to not only create these data sets, but to make them open to everybody who wants to use them. So this is how we bring entrepreneurs into this space. Just to recap, we frame a challenge, we line up the incentives and the partners, and then we put out the invitation for entrepreneurs to come and get involved and collaborate and try and create solutions. And Agami, I mean, it's not just through challenges. We continue supporting all of the organizations that we interact with as a result of these challenges to try and see, because the space is so big and the scale of the problem is so large that we need many hundreds of providers of these kinds of solutions, not 5 and 10. So the fact that there is such a small group of people who are doing this right now tells you that this space there's so much of opportunity for so many people to come and jump into this space. The second thing that Agami does is, because it's not just Agami that is inviting entrepreneurs into this space. There are so many people who are doing great work in this space. Sometimes entrepreneurs themselves, entrepreneurs who have great foresight, have spotted the opportunity and come in themselves. So how do we know who is doing what and which places within law and justice are actually moving forward, which parts of the sector are actually evolving over time? So we decided that the best way to discover all of these organizations was to host a prize for everybody in this space. Every other sector has its own way of recognizing innovators and entrepreneurs in their space. Journalists, for example, have there are several awards that various media organizations run and even independent organizations run to recognize innovation in journalism. The healthcare sector has several awards to recognize innovation, and just about every sector you can think of, whether it is education, tech, design, etc. All of these sectors have some way of recognizing and incentivizing innovation that's taking place. So how do we do that in law and justice? And we said, why don't we run a prize and an award to recognize innovation in certain sectors within certain categories within law and justice, and let's see who comes, right? And that's a great way of knowing how vibrant this space is. So we launched something called Agami Prize, and Agami Prize has three categories where we reward innovation. One is industry, which is anybody who's providing or has come up with ideas that is pushing the legal sector forward and is impacting industry specifically. So we recognize innovations there. We have one winner who wins a 10 lakh grant, plus a whole host of other incentives which have been provided for by our partners, including Niti Aayog, Dasara, ORF Foundation, etc. We have a whole host of partners who are committed to ensuring that not only the winners, but several of the participants who sign up for the application are elevated and supported in the way that they need to make sure that their idea goes forward. We also have what's called the Citizenship Prize, or the Shamnath Bashir Citizenship Prize, um, where we recognize innovation in the citizenship space. And this is open to a whole host of change makers in citizenship. So there are organizations in the civic space, there are journalists who can apply. There are NGOs that are doing great work to ensure entitlements to vulnerable communities. You have individuals and projects and initiatives who have gotten together, even now during, for example, COVID situations, to ensure that, for example, migrant workers are receiving their entitlements and that justice is done to people who don't have access to it. That access to legal services is being made available to, for example, women and children who are vulnerable, especially during COVID times. So, for example, what we've seen is that domestic abuse has increased as a result of the lockdown, because now victims of domestic abuse are now locked up with their abusers at home for extended periods of time and don't have access to any kind of law and justice. So organizations that are trying to bridge that gap are also applying for these kinds of are applying for the citizenship award. The third category, which is extremely important, recognizes new ideas which are either impacting industry or citizenship. And what I mean by new ideas is people who apply within citizenship and industry are typically ideas that are at a stage where they can show impact or prove impact. So, when you apply, you'll be asked, how is your idea making an impact or solving for the problem that you've identified? The idea prize basically is for people who are early stage ideas who still don't have impact, and they can be at any stage. They can be at a stage where they're still testing out their idea. They can be at a stage where the people or the founders have come together and they're still talking about the idea, but they don't have a full blown plan, but they're committed to the idea. Most importantly, they can apply for the idea category, and we have a 5 lakh grant for at least 2 ideas that are showing promise. Plus, there's an additional 5 lakhs each for idea prize once they've hit a particular milestone, which is something that we like. After you get selected, we work with you to try and figure out what those milestones are. Um, but it doesn't stop there. For people who apply to the prize, it's not just about winning and getting these grants. Sometimes organizations need other kinds of support that's beyond money. And we work with everybody who applies to understand what it is that they are doing, what is the impact that they are having. And based on the kind of impact and support that they need from the outside, we jump in. So other sectors have incubation programs, they have accelerator programs. We don't have any of that. For us, it's very ad hoc. So we're not, law and justice is such a young space that it's not mature enough to have an accelerator program or a incubation program. So we try to fill in whatever gap we think that you need to thrive and evolve in your space. So one way in which we do that is we have extended conversations and engagements with everybody who applies, and we try and create these relationships, these personal relationships with everybody. And it's just a few hundred people who typically apply for the prize. Last time we had about 160 people. It happens once in 2 years. So last time we had about 160 people who applied. This year we're expecting anywhere between 250 to 300 people, and we plan to have relationships with all of these people. And what happens is once we speak to them, and we collect a lot of information from you on what you're doing, what kind of support you need. One way in which we try to support all of these organizations is through something called Agami Scape, which is uh, a document like this. I have it here, in fact, in front of me. This is Agami Scape, which is a book. In fact, this year it's going to be a digital publication, and it's got details of every startup working in the law and justice space, what they are doing, what kind of progress they're making, what kind of support they need, how they're moving forward, what is moving, what is not moving. And this book actually makes it into the hands of investors. It makes it into the hands of other change makers like you who are looking to collaborate, ecosystem players like us. There are other ecosystem players apart from us as well who are interested in this kind of stuff, and we share it with them as well. It goes into the hand of law firms, anybody and everybody who's a stakeholder in this space. Typically, we give access to this book. It's available not just as a physical copy, but also a PDF. But this year, we're actually trying to go one step forward. We're actually going to make the data that's coming from these applications available as visualizations that anybody can sort of play with and drill down into to get more deeper insights that will help them understand the law and justice space better. So the I've spoken about what Agami does broadly, right? So we try to create a space for entrepreneurs to come in. We try to create ways in which you can see other people who are working in the space, so that there are collaborations, etc. I'll talk about uh, other ways in which we also create these collaborations, and how we try to get this law and justice space to be a really close knit community and a thriving ecosystem. And I can see there's a question here on the webinar: are there any mandatory prerequisites for collaborators? See, the only prerequisite is your commitment to the idea that you're working on. So if you're committed to your idea, there are no prerequisites beyond that. We don't expect you to be a lawyer. We don't expect you to know anything about the law and justice space. Um, all we expect from you is that you have identified a problem, that you have a commitment to solve that problem, and that you are looking to be open and collaborative in your approach. And as long as you have those check marks, uh, you'll find that there is a very, very open community and ecosystem that's willing to embrace you and work with you and give you all kinds of support, whatever it is, whether it is being connected to the right investors, whether it is looking for other people like you who are doing very similar work that you can work with, whether it is unlocking resources, information, and data that you need to move to the next level. You'll find that there's somebody or the other in the ecosystem that we will connect you to, or you can connect yourself through the platforms that we create, that's willing to help you out. So I'll give you some examples in which we work in more minute, intimate ways. We organize a lot of webinars. That's one way in which we talk about our work, and we try and highlight certain people. In fact, today at 9 o'clock, we have another webinar with innovators from law and justice that we're doing with Youth Ki Awaaz. So if you follow us on any of Agami's handles, you can join that conversation as well. That's an open conversation. We have about 4 innovators there that we're having a conversation with. We also have a fellow who works with Agami who sits inside Stanford University. And her job is actually to identify innovation that's happening globally that is relevant to India. So I'll give you an example. So she looks for innovation in law and justice, for example, in the states, and her job is to sit with those startups, see what it is that they're doing and what makes their work innovative, and then try and identify startups in India who have similar objectives or overlapping intents, and then try and get the Indian startups to collaborate with these American startups and try and create a collaboration to accelerate the innovation that's happening in India. So we've done 2 editions of these already. They happen once a month, and these are they're typically closed conversations. We only invite the startups that we are aware of that are doing great work in this space. So the conversation is typically between 10 to 20 people, and we then make sure that these collaborations take place and they actually lead to some kind of change making in India. So that is called Bridges for Justice. If you visit our website, you'll see information about Bridges for Justice. We also have another program that we recently started called No Changemaker Left Behind. And this is our way of trying to support young changemakers, whether they're in college, whether they come from a completely different background, no matter what that background is, no matter what their education is, if they are committed to resolving a problem in the law and justice space, and they need some kind of soft support in the form of either mentorship, we are willing to get onto a quick 30-minute call with any changemaker who signs up. Our mentors include not only founders of Agami, who is Sachin Malhan and Supriya, who used to work with Ashoka Foundation, former directors of Ashoka. But we also have other mentors who are willing to give their time. So, for example, we have Pramod Rao, who is the legal head of ICICI Bank. We have other people in the space as well, a whole range of mentors who are constantly expanding on, who are willing to give up to 2 half-an-hour slots every week to any change maker in the space who's willing to work on law and justice issues. But apart from all of these programs, we try to be as accessible and open as possible. So anybody who shows interest in doing work in this space, literally all you have to do is either email us, pick up the phone and call us, or visit our website and contact us like that. And we typically respond and reach out and try and make the connections that you need to thrive in the law and justice space. So this is broadly what Agami does. And, just to give you a sense, while we are aware of all the people who are working in the law and justice space, we also realize that sometimes it's important for people who are working within the space to see each other, right? Without Agami necessarily having to always be the organization that organizes all of these things. So we organize something called Agami Summit every year. We've had 2 summits already, and we're having the next summit this year, which is most likely going to be an online summit this time around. The first summit happened in Delhi. The second summit happened in Bangalore International Center. in BIC. We typically get about 300 change makers. Last time around, we had 300 change makers who joined us in the summit. This included journalists, it included people from the NGO space. You had top lawyers from organizations like Tata, Aditya Birla Group, Make My Trip, all the top lawyers from every organization you can put your finger on. We had investors who came on board. We had journalists like Faye D'Souza. You have participants like Baka that who all came and joined in these conversations at various stages. To either deliver keynote speeches or to make themselves available on panel discussions. And they were there for about 3 days. So they interacted with everybody and had plenty of opportunity to bump into each other over dinner, etc., just to meet and create collaborations. And Agami is trying to do this year long, not just through not just through Agami Summit. We also have something called Agami Shala, where we pick 15 to 20 change makers in particular spaces. We take them to remote locations, and we spend dedicated time just uh, uh, not just mentoring them, but giving them access to experiences, knowledge, and each other to try and create those deep bonds that they need to thrive in this space. So these are the different ways in which Agami is trying to create a thriving ecosystem in law and justice. And my hope is that through conversations like this and through partners like B.PAC that are doing amazing work in the civic space, and other organizations that are doing amazing work in their own spaces that intersect with law and justice in some way or the other. My hope is that we all work together to try and work on those intersections, and so that we strengthen those bonds more strongly, and so that we can cross pollinate and we get more change makers, for example, from the B-Clip program, who start looking at some of these law and justice issues as important for the communities that they care about, for corporators to look at their constituencies and actively take up some of these issues. I'll give you an example. During COVID, there were so many entitlements that both state governments as well as central governments have announced. And many organizations that we've been working with have been trying really, really hard to ensure that these entitlements reach the people that they are meant for, whether it is grants that are available to auto drivers, whether it is food entitlements that should be going to below poverty line families, whether it is other rights related entitlements that people should be receiving, but for whatever reason there is some barrier preventing them from getting there. Several lockdown related law and justice issues, like I discussed earlier, for example, domestic abuse, etc. There's several organizations, and I know even individuals, which are trying to bridge these gaps. And what we've realized is that there is such a huge gap between demand for these kind of services and supply. Supply is really, really small. Demand is huge. So, we don't have space for just 100 change makers to join. There's literally space in India for lakhs of change makers to get involved in this space without, stepping on each other's shoes and without looking at each other as competition. There's really, at least for the next 15 to 20 years, no matter how many people join this space, there is no scope for competition. The size of the problem is just that large. So my invitation as we come to the end of this conversation is for more and more of you to please have these conversations with us, to reach out to us in any way that you would like, and talk to us about how you would like to work in the law and justice space. There is space for not only NGOs and people who are interested in becoming cooperators, etc. There's also space for startups. There's space for people who are looking to start businesses, and we don't discriminate between any of these, whether you're for profit or not for profit. As long as you're able to solve a problem in the law and justice space, there is enough of a base that is interested in your services that you can choose any of these, for profit, not for profit, and you will find customers as well as stakeholders who are willing to buy into your idea. So with that, I'm going to end, and I'm happy to take any questions if at all. So Sachin, over to you. If there are any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Varun. I think our B-Clip leaders, anybody wants to ask some questions for applying for the grant? Sampath, I saw some questions from you. Yeah.
So just want to point out, I'll wait if there are any questions coming in. Just want to point out that the Agami Prize is still open for application. The website is agami.in/prize, or you can just go to the agami.in and follow the links there. And applications are open till Friday tentatively. We plan to extend deadlines for some of you who start your applications now. We might extend it for a few more days. So I urge you, if you have an idea or you have an initiative that's already running, to start your applications as soon as possible. Sorry, Sampath, I can see you have a question. Yes.
Yeah, so only this is for the law issues, right? There is no other areas which we are covering here, grant or something.
No, that's not true. So I was hoping through my conversation, I would have made this part clear, but I want to make this extremely clear if it isn't already. We, we're not. This is not only open to legal issues. We are looking at law and justice broadly. So, for example, if you work on children's rights, if you work on women's rights, if you work on land rights, if you work with police in some capacity, if you work with lawyers or provide pro bono legal services in some capacity,
Mhm.
if you are engaged in citizenship rights, you're trying to help citizens better realize their entitlements
Mhm.
or better or realize their rights. If you are creating platforms or new data sets for citizens or organizations to better access justice or better access their rights, all of these things fall within what we consider to be law.
Okay, okay, got it. So I think most of our B clip leaders, as you had mentioned, are working in the same area, and this is a nice session, I can say. This is something new for me. I never thought that whatever we are already doing, there is a grant for it, there is a prize, and then appreciation coming up from a platform like Agami. So very nice.
So I just want to share with you, what these platforms can really do. So, Agami is a very young organization. We're only 2 years old, and uh, most people, I'm pretty sure even this audience wouldn't have heard of us. Most of our work happened in very small groups. We were well known in lawyer circles, well known by judges. And recently, as soon as COVID had struck, all of us are working from home. But more importantly, the courts couldn't function because courts are such a physical. They're so reliant on physical meetings. Uh, to disburse justice, suddenly the courts had to think about new ways of delivering justice, right? So the courts convened something called an e-court committee, and Agami had put together a paper. We've been talking about taking justice online for so long. Just like you can book a cab, just like you can order your food online, you should be able to, have justice delivered online as well. So the court picked up on this paper, and Agami is currently sitting on the Supreme Court Committee for e-courts. We're also sitting on the AI committee that's looking at the implementation of artificial intelligence in the courts. And now the court has recognized that more and more people who are not lawyers, who are not judges, need to enter this space and start providing justice. And the only way that they can do that is if we all get together and don't look at the fact that you don't have a legal background as a weakness. It is actually your strength, because you have ideas that lawyers haven't thought of, that are really important for this space to move forward. So the fact that you're not a lawyer, the fact that you are not a judge, the fact that you don't practice law in any way is your strength. So this is an invitation for all of you who are not lawyers, and even lawyers who are considering becoming entrepreneurs. There are so many lawyers who have decided that the best way to serve justice is not by being not by practicing law, but by becoming an entrepreneur and creating solutions that you can scale to not just millions, but billions of Indians, right? 1 billion Indians out there who need access to justice. And you can't do that as a lawyer. As a lawyer, you can serve maybe a few hundred people in your career. But as an entrepreneur, you can probably you can solve problems for millions. And I am not kidding when I say millions, because these 3 students who set up a platform called Sama, and you can visit their website, sama.live. Their platform is capable of solving up to 1 million disputes at a time, which no court in India can handle. So that's the power of entrepreneurship and the power of people from outside the state coming to law and justice.
Actually, I had asked this question already. What I would thought is earlier when I asked, is it legal to solve problem outside court? Why I asked that, because during initial days when we all get in touch with politics, so we used to see this outside court settlements happening with political people. That is where I saw earlier. So my question was, is it legal or not? Because I always thought that this is illegal. People are trying to resolve things outside court, which is illegal, maybe with power or whatever they have. But when you say legal, there will be some court, right, for this. There is a.
So what is important is not that whether the dispute is resolved legally or outside legal parameters. What is important is that you and another person have a dispute, and you come together to resolve that dispute to your satisfaction, right? Now, the problem is when 2 people decide to go to court, by that time, what has happened is both of you have lost trust, right? There is a very small chance that both of you will be able to restore that trust between you and resolve your disputes amicably. So when you go to court, the mindset is such that you are adversarial, you are fighting with somebody, right? You want to teach them a lesson, right? That is the kind of mindset that people go into court with. So what we are trying to do is, when 2 people have a dispute, you should be able to resolve it amicably. You should be able to have that trust and understand that you are 2 people that mean well, and that there are better ways of resolving your dispute, and you don't have to go to court and fight. There don't have to be winners and losers. So court, this is what the court also wants. The court doesn't want to see everybody coming to court and fighting battles that judges have to sit and listen to for hours and days. They want to see that 2 people can build capacities within themselves to resolve issues between themselves. So when a court hears that 2 parties have gotten together and they have resolved their issue outside court, the court is very happy, right? Because now they can focus their energy on more important issues. There are constitutional problems that need to be resolved by the court. There are issues that affect millions of people that need to be taken care of by the court. Not these hundreds and millions of issues that are only between 2 people, right? So to answer your question, all of these alternative dispute mechanisms have full legal backing of the court. They are enforceable in court. So if you are awarded a mediation award, or if you are awarded an arbitration award, if you do not comply, it is as good as contempt of court. It is enforceable in court. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I got it. So till the time both the parties are comfortable with the solutions provided outside the court, and they don't have any complaints about that, it is okay.
Correct. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, you answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Varun. Hello, Varun.
Hi, Geetha.
Hi. So I was wondering, because this is completely a new topic for us as a B.PAC leaders, trying to understand it itself is a little, and it takes a little time for us because this field is completely new for us. So based on this, whatever, you have said the grants are available on the areas, platforms we are working on. Are there, because you have said some 3 fields or something? Yeah, okay. Apart from that, if we have to understand this properly, do we have any projects which are ongoing and which have been awarded, as you said previously, in the previous competitions, and where we can get a fair idea on what the competition is, how it is, what are the parameters required to understand about this projects? How can we apply? How do we apply? In what way? What are the basic? All these things, questions will be answered. So is there any, some says around 10 projects that are ongoing where we can have an access to it, at least a general idea about those projects, so that, we can relate to it?
That's a great question. So if you visit our website, agami.in, we talk about, our tagline at Agami is ideas that serve justice. And there are literally hundreds of ideas out there that we are working with in some way or the other. In some cases, we play a supportive role with those ideas. In some cases, we're slightly more deeply involved. If it is an organization that has come in through a challenge, or an organization that has come in through a Agami prize, then our involvement with them is slightly deeper. So if you visit agami.in, we actually have a section called ideas, and you can see all the ideas that we work with, which are the organizations that are working on those ideas, and if they've participated in any of our challenges, or if they won an Agami prize, we've mentioned that as well. So it gives you a sense of what kind of innovation we value, what kind of organizations are doing a great job in this space, um, and from time to time we keep organizing these kind of interactions where we invite people to have these conversations with us, and we openly talk about innovation in this space. So even today, like I mentioned, we have a conversation with 4 innovators in this space. Some of them have actually won the prize. So for example, Antara, who runs an organization called Civis. Some of you might be aware of Civis. They're very active in the civic space, especially in Bangalore. The founder of Civis, Antara, is actually an Idea Prize winner from 2018. And she will be joining us on a panel with Youth Ki Awaaz at 9 o'clock today. We have other organizations, some of them based in Bangalore, some of them based in places like Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, etc., who've also won challenges, who are doing some amazing stuff. And you can see all of that stuff on our website as well.
Sure, we'll do that. Varun, one more thing, talking about the legal field. This is a legal field, right? So there are many issues, especially if you take, we are B.CLIP leaders, and we tend to see a corporation as our destination. Okay. So there are, of course, many legal issues over there itself. So, and it's quite a tricky situation there. Uh, you're talking about BBMP, right? So there are many things which are happening in BBMP. There are many legal issues which come into picture there also. So how do you tackle with it? Do you have any this one cases where you come across, you solved any of these things with BBMP?
So let me, that's a great question. Let me put it this way. Agami typically takes a very leveraged position when we try to solve a problem, right? So we don't try to get involved directly in the problem ourselves, because the moment you get involved in one problem, you get sucked into that problem, and you only end up being in that one space for a really long time.
Yeah.
So instead, what we do is we look for organizations that are doing great work in a space. If we've identified a problem, we also try to identify what we call bright spots, which is who are the organizations or the people who are already involved in trying to solve this problem. We spend a lot of time talking to them to try and understand how they are solving the problem, what is the impact that they are having, what is the scale of their impact, etc. And then we try and see whether this particular problem is at an inflection point, which means, is it the right time to launch a challenge in this space, so that Agami's impact is so that when Agami launches this challenge, it has this huge multiplier effect, and a whole bunch of entrepreneurs decide to come into this space and try and solve this problem. If a space is not at an inflection point, if it is not mature enough, it is still at a very early stage, then Agami doesn't get involved. Like, we wait for some time till we see a little more interest from entrepreneurs and people to get involved in the problem. So you'll find that all the problems that we focus on are at an inflection point, where the moment we launch a challenge, suddenly like 20, 30, 40 entrepreneurs get involved and they start working on trying to resolve that problem. So COVID has been a great, I don't want to use the word great, but like, it's been an opportunity for us to push solutions that the court has been sitting on for so many years. And, it's not like Agami is the first organization that's been coming and saying, pendency is a problem. You can't have cases getting stuck in court for 4 years. The legal system shouldn't be so complicated that you need a lawyer or an army of lawyers to have to solve problems for you. So it's not like Agami is the first organization that's been talking about this. But what's different about the way Agami has done it is we recognize the opportunity at the right moment, and that is when we get involved. And so now what you're seeing is that now the court has launched an e-committee. Now there's a whole range of ecosystem players who are willing to get around a problem. So that is how we work on it. And to answer your question specifically about the BBMP, like we will never get involved directly with the BBMP on anything. We will work with organizations who are working with the BBMP. So we might work with B-Clip change makers, or we might work with B.PAC, or we might work with other organizations that are doing great work there, like Civis, for example, who I mentioned earlier. We will work with them to see what they need in terms of support to improve their impact. But Agami will never get directly involved with any of these organizations.
So that's a good one. As you said, with BBMP, if we are working, because we also work with BBMP hand in hand. So we just don't go against anything, because we see to that, we work along with them and make sure. I think Agami will play a bridge-like thing where we can do a lot of things with BBMP, considering this challenge now.
Absolutely. And, just one more point, like we will look at people like B.PAC, and we look at, like some of your B-Clip change makers, and we'll say, there are some great people in these organizations that are doing some great work. Agami has no expertise, to come in and try and solve these problems. But what Agami is really good at is by getting all the right people, from different spaces together to start looking at this problem more closely and creating a great ecosystem for all of them to collaborate. So that is the role Agami will play. And we'll identify gaps, and we'll identify people who are doing similar work, both in India as well as abroad, and try and create the collaborations so that they all learn from each other and work together to solve this problem much faster. So we'll try and be an accelerator to the solutions, but we will never get involved in the solution directly.
Okay. All right.
Anybody else happy to, just mindful of time, we have another 3 minutes. So if there's one more question, I'm happy to take it. But otherwise, we're always accessible, and we can always have these conversations over email and personal chats and conversations. So if there's one more question, happy to take it here.
Ashok Kumar.
Hi, Mr. Ashok Kumar.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Ashok Kumar, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
I think there is some internet problem, right?
Yeah, I think.
Can I speak in Kannada? Hello. Hello.
You're more than welcome to speak
Hello.
in Kannada. I don't understand, so if someone can translate for me, I'd appreciate it.
Ashok Kumar,
okay, sir.
internet ತುಂಬಾ ಸ್ಲೋ ಆಗಿದೆ, ತುಂಬಾ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ.
ಸಚಿನ್, ನೀವು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ.
ಹಲೋ.
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ಸೌಂಡೇ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ತುಂಬಾ ಕಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆಫ್ ಮಾಡಿ, ನೀವು ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಇದು ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ಕೇಳಿಸುತ್ತೆ.
ಸರಿ ಸರ್.
ಇವಾಗ ಮಾತಾಡಿ, ನಾನು ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ.
ಓಕೆ ಸರ್.
ಕೇಳಿ. ಅಶೋಕ್ ಅವರೇ, ನಿಮ್ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿ.
ಹಲೋ.
ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆ ಕೇಳಿ ಅಶೋಕ್ ಅವರೇ.
In case he's having challenges with his video, he can always ask his question on chat. I'm happy to answer like that also.
Yeah, or else I'll have a word with him later. Maybe we can connect you and then we can close that.
No
okay.
problem.
I think anyone else has any other questions? Ilvala yargu? Okay. Thank you, Varun, for a wonderful session. I think our leaders are, quite inspired and motivated to know about the wonderful things that Agami is doing and the prizes that you've been offering, the grants. Many of them are have done some wonderful work, and they're also eligible for these awards. I'm sure they'll all apply for it, and I wish them the best. And thanks, Agami, and we would like to do more such initiatives with you. Wonderful session, and we're looking forward to winning a couple of these prizes too very soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank
you.
you,
It was
Varun.
lovely meeting all of you.